All right, let's dive right into this explainer and uncover the secret, high-speed biological battle happening right now on your face. Every single day, your 43 facial muscles are engaging in this rapid tug-of-war between what you actually want the world to see and what your brain truly feels. It's this absolutely fascinating intersection of neurobiology, psychology, and, increasingly, artificial intelligence.
We've got a lot of ground to cover today. We're going to look at the hidden learning of faces, map out the human face, dive into the science of deception, explore where AI and affective computing fit in, and finally, wrap up with the future of human feeling. Let's get into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the hidden language of faces and the neurobiology of emotion.
To really understand this, we need to peel back what we think we know about everyday smiles and frowns. Think of it like you have two completely different neural pathways competing for control of your face. On one side, you have macro expressions. These last anywhere from half a second to 4 seconds and are driven by the voluntary pyramidal neural tract that originates in your motor cortex. This is what lets you, politely smile at a terrible joke. But on the other side, we have micro expressions. These are incredibly fast, often a fifth of a second or less, and they're driven by the involuntary extrapyramidal tract linked to your limbic system. So your conscious brain tries to mask an emotion using the pyramidal system, but your involuntary system momentarily overrides it, causing this microscopic emotional leak.
In this interaction is absolutely crucial. Recent 2026 intracranial EEG data shows that while children actually rely on a totally different part of the brain to process expressions, our prefrontal cortex matures by adulthood to help us consciously filter these rapid responses in high-stakes environments. This maturation enables what scientists call top-down modulation of the amygdala. Essentially, the amygdala evaluates ambiguous facial cues, and our prefrontal cortex acts like a bouncer, keeping our raw emotional displays in check. Moving to Section 2, mapping the human face and the science of facts. So how exactly do scientists measure an emotional leak that fast? Well, they do it like forensic detectives, building on decades of research. Because these movements happen in just a fraction of a second, you can't just guess what someone is feeling. You literally have to measure it. Back in 1966, Ernest Haggard and Kenneth Isaacs discovered these micro-momentary expressions by agonizingly scanning therapy films frame by frame. Then, in 1969, a Swedish anatomist named Carl Hermann Hjortshow mapped out the specific muscle groups responsible for those movements. And that laid the exact groundwork for 1978 when researchers Paul Ekman and Wallace Friesen published the formal facial action coding system, which proved definitively that facial expressions are innate and universal across all human cultures. That 1978 breakthrough gave us what's known as the action unit, or AU. Instead of guessing emotions subjectively, like just saying someone looks kinda sad, researchers break the face down into these precise action units, entirely removing subjective bias. An action unit is really just the visible change produced by a specific muscle contracting. For example, the frontalis muscle raising your inner brow is simply classified objectively as action unit 1. This system basically turns the human face into a mathematical equation. Take happiness, for instance. A genuine spontaneous smile, which is known as a Duchenne smile, requires AU6, the cheek raiser, and AU12, the lip corner puller. But a fabricated, polite Pan Am smile, that only uses AU12 at the lips. The mathematical code of the face makes genuine emotion undeniable. You literally cannot fake the activation of the orbicularis oculi muscle around your eyes if you aren't genuinely happy. Which brings us to Section 3. The science of deception. Let's talk about spotting a lie. How do we actually use this math to catch someone lying? Well, in high-stakes environments where the consequences of getting caught are massive, this data becomes incredibly revealing. It all centers around the inhibition hypothesis. This is the principle that certain facial actions tied to strong emotions simply cannot be consciously stopped. If you're trying to lie to someone, your lower face might actually obey your voluntary commands, but muscles in the upper face, like the corrugator supercilii around your brows, those are notoriously difficult to control. They will absolutely betray your fear or sadness, resulting in that emotional leakage we talked about earlier. In fact, researchers found that when people try to deceive, this inconsistent emotional leakage occurs in 100% of participants. And it's not just the muscles being used, it's the exact speed at which they move. A genuine microexpression has a very specific temporal curve. It has a rapid onset, a very brief apex where the muscle peaks, and a quick offset. A true microexpression hits its apex in less than 200 milliseconds.
If the timing of this onset apex offset curve is stilted, like say the onset is just a tiny fraction of a second too slow, that is a massive red flag for deception. But here's the wild part. Humans are naturally blind to almost all of this. Out of 20,000 people tested in the famous Diogenes project, only 50 natural truth wizards could accurately spot these microexpressions with over 80% accuracy. Spotting an incredibly subtle muscle twitch that lasts less than a fifth of a second is an incredibly rare human ability. And honestly, training tools have shown pretty limited success in fixing our natural blind spots.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, AI and affective computing, or how we automate this recognition. Since humans are naturally terrible at spotting this stuff, researchers have obviously turned to artificial intelligence. We are now combining the anatomical science of the 1970s with the raw computational power of the 2020s. To train these AI models to see what we physically can't, we have to rely on massive, high-speed video datasets that capture spontaneous reactions. Datasets like CAS-Me2 and SAM record faces at a blistering 200 frames per second. But what's really crucial here is the recent 2025 IS-Me dataset. It runs at 240 frames per second and specifically features Indian participants. Historically, algorithms trained only on Western or East Asian faces really struggled with other demographics, so building out these diverse datasets is absolutely vital for closing the cultural gap in AI recognition. The leap in accuracy we are seeing is staggering. Traditional machine learning from a decade ago hovered around 63% accuracy. Deep learning models eventually pushed that to almost 90%. But the real game changer right now is hybrid AI. By combining vision transformers, which capture global facial dependencies, with GPT-based psychological reasoning, machines can now read our hidden emotions with nearly 99% accuracy. The AI spots the action units, and the GPT reasoning agent contextualizes them to resolve emotional confusion in real time. It's wild. Finally, Section 5, the future of feeling, looking at the clinical and social impact of all this. This brings us to the profound clinical implications of this exploding technology. It's no longer just about catching a liar at an airport. It's about treating disease, understanding neurodivergence, and completely reshaping society. In a remarkable 2025 breakthrough at Oxford, researchers discovered they could literally use sound waves to alter human perception. By understanding the neurological circuits of facial recognition, they used low-intensity focused ultrasound to non-invasively suppress amygdala activity. This actually caused subjects to interpret emotionally ambiguous faces as happy rather than threatening. We are now looking at legitimately treating social anxiety and depression by modulating the amygdala directly without making a single incision. Furthermore, our entire understanding of neurodivergence is being rewritten. A landmark 2026 study from the University of Birmingham mapped over 265 million data points and proved that autistic individuals don't have an expressive impairment at all. Instead, they just speak a different, perfectly valid expressive language. For example, when expressing sadness, autistic participants utilized the upper lip more significantly. So miscommunications aren't a deficit, they're just a mismatch in expressive dialects. AI is even jumping into the realm of early disease detection. Tools like the Noldus face reader are now automatically analyzing 20 distinct facial action units to detect hypomimia or masked face, which is a major early indicator of Parkinson's disease. By tracking subtle decreases in positive expressions and minute increases in muscle stiffness and asymmetry, the AI can flag the probability of Parkinson's long before human doctors ever notice the clinical signs. Now, obviously, integrating this kind of tech into our daily lives brings up some massive real-world questions that researchers are fiercely debating right now. We're moving away from simple identity facial recognition to analyzing someone's actual state of mind at border crossings and in public spaces. Security professionals are having to weigh these undeniable efficiencies against severe privacy concerns and the very real potential for automated bias. It really comes down to a conversation about where we draw the line as these models become more empathetic and capable of reading our underlying emotional narrative. So what's the big takeaway from this explainer? Well, the study of facial expressions has rapidly transitioned from a painstaking manual analysis of film strips into a high-speed, AI-driven exploration of the human mind. As machines master the invisible fraction of a second code of our faces, we have to ask ourselves a pretty profound question. If our most fleeting, involuntary expressions can be decoded by machines, what happens when our deepest feelings are no longer our own to keep? Thank you so much for joining me today, and stay curious.